What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review, and this time we're taking a look at X-Men First Class, the fifth installment into the franchise and its second prequel. Let's waste no time, let's get into it. Okay, so after The Last Stand and X-Men Origins were really not really well received by fans, it was time to do a soft reboot of the franchise, but in continuity. So, the idea spurned off to do the early days of Professor X and Magneto, hence how First Class was made. So, with the broad strokes background out of the way, let's just talk about this movie. I overall really like X-Men First Class. I think this movie goes back to the tone of the first two movies. It captures that serious and grittiness of the first two movies, but it also does maintain a sense of humor in a lot of areas, but it never comes across as forced or cringy. I think the characters in this movie has a lot of characters, and to its credit, it kind of gives most of them some arcs. There are certain characters who I thought who were kind of underutilized, who I thought would have been cool, and you could have easily teased for their future importance in the X-Men lore. But as an overall film itself, from its construction, I thought X-Men First Class was really, really well done. So with all that being said, let's talk about it. So my positives out of the way first. I love the cast of this movie. James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender as young Professor X and young Magneto fit these roles to his absolute T, and their performances, to me, parallel that of Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, but they don't try to copy those performances. These two bring their own spin to these characters. James McAvoy gives Professor X a bit of a more charismatic and free spirit personality. Like, he ain't that buttoned down, hard nosed professor that we saw him in the first three movies. He's a little bit more free range, a little bit, not over the top, but he's got some rogueness to him. And James McAvoy played it to an absolute perfection. He really captured the seriousness of Professor X, but also gave him a little bit of a personality, where he's not so stiff. So I loved it. McAvoy's Professor X, perfect casting, brings so much to the role, so much charisma. Michael Fassbender, on the other hand, as Magneto, whew, Michael Fassbender, to me, he is the shining star of X-Men First Class. I love Fassbender's performance as Magneto. I love the backstory. That I like how this movie, paid nice homage to Magneto's backstory, but it changed it up a little bit. So the movie takes place. So the movie takes place in between the periods of 1944 and 1963, like that 20-year period. We see the prologue from the first X-Men movie where Magneto's in the death camps of Auschwitz, but we also see what happens to him. He comes into contact with this Nazi scientist named Klaus Schmidt, who's really this mutant named Sebastian Shaw, and it's Sebastian Shaw who experiments on Magneto and pretty much brings out his mutation even more. He does this by pretty much torturing Magneto, by pretty much killing Magneto's mother right in front of him, and then doing these heinous experiments on him. And this helped to shape Magneto's worldview and develop his pain, his anger, his hatred. And I thought Michael Fassbender captured all those facets perfectly, while all the while giving his version of Magneto a much-needed gravitas, much-needed pathos, which we see as the film progresses when he meets with Xavier. Their friendship develops, and it's actually Xavier who teaches Magneto to balance his pain, but also balance it with serenity, like to unlock those bright corners of his head instead of just having those dark corners of his head be lit all the time. Great stuff. I can't praise the writing and the performances when it comes to Michael Fassbender and McAvoy and how they're portrayed on screen and how they're written. Beautiful stuff. Their relationship in this movie is awesome. Like I said, it parallels that of Stewart and McKellen. Like, I buy these versions of Magneto and McAvoy being lifelong friends, even though they have a lot of differences in opinion. So yeah, McAvoy and Fassbender's the co-leads. Fantastic stuff. Brilliantly and well done. The supporting cast in this movie is really, really good. You got Jennifer Lawrence, who is Mystique, and I like how they made Mystique like the adopted sister to Charles Xavier in a way. McAvoy and Lawrence just have a really good on-screen chemistry with one another. Like, I buy them as being brother and sister. Now, of course, if you watch this movie chronologically, it provides a lot of gaping plot holes, especially when you watch the first X-Men movie. Like we see in this one, we see in First Class that Xavier and Mystique deeply care for one another on a sibling-like level. Then you watch X-Men, and Mystique takes no qualms in nearly killing Professor X, who's basically the man who raised her and took her out of poverty. Like, it provides a lot of gaping plot holes. But if you watch X-Men First Class as a soft reboot and maybe a reinvention of the franchise, which is to me, First Class should have just been a clean slate, not connected to the prior X-Men movies and just been its own thing, then I think it would have made a lot more sense, to be honest with you, in terms of the plot holes that it develops. But no, X-Men First Class takes place in the same universe as the rest of the X-Men movies. Oh yeah, but I'll get to those negatives when I get to those negatives. But J Law as Mystique, I like it a lot. I like how she hides herself in human form because she's a saint of her mutation, and it's Magneto who pretty much throughout the course of the movie who convinces her to accept who she is, and that just plants the little seeds of their relationship and what that relationship turns into with the original X-Men trilogy. So I like all that stuff. We have other mutants in this thing like Banshee. I think the actor who played Banshee, he had his fun little bits and moments. Lucas, I can't remember what his name is, but he played Havoc, Alex Summers. Yeah, we have the little brother of Cyclops in this movie. Therefore, in the movie universe, Alex is the older and Scott is the younger. Havoc, I like a lot of his scenes. I like how he's hot-headed, confrontational. I like the teasing moments he has with Hank McCoy, Beast, where he constantly pokes fun at him and makes fun of him. I like that. That's like joyful bantering to me. But also, he grows as a character and turns more heroic. I think it would have been cooler if Havoc Alex would have had a little bit more to do and actually show some leadership qualities. But he basically just shows like an underling soldier quality. But he has some fun moments, so I ain't gonna lie. Zoe Kravitz, who played Firefly, Angel Gonzalez, she was fine in the role. I ain't the world's biggest Zoe Kravitz fan. I think she's a very bland actress, and in this movie, it's no exception. But she does have some good bits here and there. Particularly like the scene where she meets Xavier and Magneto for the first time at a dance club. That was very entertaining. I enjoyed that for what it was. Rose Byrne plays Moira McTaggart, a CIA agent who works very closely with the X-Men, specifically Charles Xavier. I like Moira McTaggart in this movie. I like her as a CIA agent. I like her working with the X-Men. I like the underlying romance that subtly develops between her and Charles, which is a nice call to the comic books and the relationship that they have. So I got no problems with that. And I thought Byrne and McAvoy actually have some decent on-screen chemistry, and I buy them as and I buy their budding romance that ends up in tragedy because it never really goes anywhere towards the end of the movie, since Xavier has to do what's best for the mutants and pretty much make sure they stay secret. But I like everything that happens in between. January Jones, she's in this movie. She plays Emma Frost. She's okay. She doesn't really have much of an on-screen presence. She has some cool scenes here and there, but she's kind of forgettable. January Jones as Emma Frost, kind of forgettable. Doesn't really capture the personality of her comic book's counterpart. Then we have Jason Fleming, who plays Azazel, who is the father of Nightcrawler and the man who knocked up Mystique. This movie, to me, did not have enough Azazel. I liked Azazel. I like the look of Azazel. I like Jason Fleming as an actor. He's a very good character actor. I've seen him in a lot of things where I think he's very entertaining. This movie did not have a lot of Azazel, which is a shame because the makeup for Azazel looks fantastic. I like the overall look of him in his black suit with his red tie. He has that suave, devilish appearance to him. And it would have been cool if Azazel had more interaction, specifically with that of Mystique, hinting and teasing at the fact that these are Nightcrawler's parents. But we didn't get that. Azazel just comes across as an underling with Shaw, which is a shame. We could have done more with that. Speaking of which, I like Kevin Bacon as Sebastian Shaw in this movie. I think Kevin Bacon, when you watch this movie, is having a blast playing this villainous character. I like the charisma he brings. I like the on-screen intensity that he has. I like how Sebastian Shaw is pretty much the harbinger of Magneto's pain and grief. And he's basically Victor Frankenstein to Michael Fassbender's Frankenstein's monster. Like, Shaw is the scientist who created Frankenstein. Magneto is his Frankenstein. And it's evidently his own creation that kills him. I love the parallels that this movie had with the Frankenstein mythos. It works really, really well. I thought it was absolute genius at doing something like that. It gave it a lot more gravitas. But as an overall just performance, I thought Kevin Bacon as Sebastian Shaw was fantastic. I like how he's a very flamboyant, yet a very skewed, yet a very hypocritical version of Magneto. And by hypocritical, I mean this. So Sebastian Shaw's whole thing is that he wants to instigate World War III between the Russians and the United States, so that way he can come across as the most dominant species. And there's a scene where he tells Emma that you don't harm any mutants after Emma and Magneto get into a little tussle, and she throws them into the ocean. Then later on in the film, where we see the first class team just mucking it up, we see Sebastian Shaw kill this mutant called Darwin. So basically, Sebastian Shaw, he don't care if you're a mutant or he don't care if you're a mutant. If you stand in his way, he's going to take you down because to him, he's superior to everyone. I like that. I like how Magneto adapts his worldview, but Magneto doesn't have full. But Magneto adapts it in a way where it's nothing like Shaw's. Like he's like, and I love the line where Magneto says, "I agree with what you say about us being the dominant race, but I don't. But there's certain aspects of your complaint that I don't agree with." I like all that stuff. I like how Sebastian Shaw is where Magneto got his worldview from, and it's not only that. It's just the experiences that Shaw put Magneto through while he was in the concentration camp in Auschwitz that even further just messed up this guy's head. Oh yeah, from a character and story standpoint, this movie is chock full of good stuff. I mean, Shaw's overarching villain goal for world domination is just bland and generic, and it's just there to give the X-Men something to do in the third act. But the stuff he does in the background with the little subplots and the little character interactions, that's where Sebastian Shaw as a character really, really shines. So yeah, Sebastian Shaw, it's refreshing to see a villain who's not like Magneto and not like Stryker, someone who's a little bit different. But it's not like X-Men can move away from Stryker because this movie has Daddy Stryker. So yeah, Stryker will forever be entwined in the X-Men movie franchise. Can we please move away from Stryker? There are other bigots in the X-Men comic books I would like to see on screen, like Graydon Creed, the son of Sabretooth and Mystique. Now, in terms of this movie's direction and acting, in terms of this movie's direction and production values, I love it. I thought Matthew Vaughn did a fantastic job behind the director's chair. He channels the spirit of Bryan Singer with this movie. It also helps that Bryan Singer came back as a writer and a producer for First Class to kind of right the ship in a way after Last Stand and Origins went way off course. So I like that because you can tell that this movie feels like a movie Bryan Singer would have done if he had full creative control as a director and a writer. It has that same feel. It has that same tone. It has that serious tone to it with its moments of levity peppered all throughout. Speaking of which, this movie has one of my favorite Wolverine cameos with Hugh Jackman. It's absolutely hysterical. I watch it all the time. Can't complain with that. In terms of the action sequences in this movie, they're very minimal. This movie is more about character interactions and bantering, but it works for me and I enjoyed it a lot. I thought a lot of the action sequences were really, really well handled, particularly with Magneto going on his quest as a Nazi killer, where he's just trying to find Shaw, which brings him to Argentina. And one of my favorite scenes right in this entire movie is the scene where he goes to the cantina in Argentina and he confronts two Nazis. Brilliantly done, brilliantly directed. Great stuff. Oh, I also forgot a very important piece of vital information. Nicholas Hoult, who plays Hank McCoy in Beast, I like Nicholas Hoult as Hank McCoy. He brings that right amount of geeky nerdiness without being over the top, and I like the relationship that between Hank and Mystique, and I like how Hank tries to find a cure for his mutation, and that cure comes from Mystique since she's able to shapeshift. And I like how it's him thinking this is what actually makes Beast go, is what actually turns Hank into Beast with all his blue, furry, monster glory. Great stuff. And just Nicholas Hoult as a whole in this movie was really, really good. I like like I mentioned, I like the interactions that he has with Havoc and the teasing with one another. I like the budding friendship that he and Xavier have. McCoy and Xavier are always known for having this really, really good friendship. And also Beast is the only original first class member in this movie. So that's also pretty cool as well too. But yeah, Nicholas Hoult, very unsung hero, very underrated actor in this film. I thought it was really, really good. And like I said, the action sequences in this movie are really well done. Like I said, the stuff with Magneto, great stuff. The whole third act is a hell of a lot of fun when they're on the beach and we see Magneto, kill Shaw. He and Xavier have their split. Xavier has his group. Magneto's got his group, It's actually Magneto who accidentally paralyzes Charles when he deflects a bullet that cracks his spine. And and this forever starts the war between Charles and Magneto, like these two friends who just can't coexist with their opinions. It's a very tragic story, but it works so well. And I also love the ending of seeing Michael Fassbender in the original comic book look at the end of the film, when he captures when he breaks Emma Frost, as she was captured after she was captured by Charles and Magneto and Russia. Okay, so yeah, that was a lot to unpack. Overall, I really like X-Men First Class, despite the issues that I do have with it, with the continuity errors and some characters who I thought were pretty good and other characters who I thought were underutilized. This is an overall great movie, sets the course right. I'm going to give it a solid 9 out of 10. Very few complaints when it comes to X-Men First Class. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.